So, okay. And hello, everybody. Welcome. This is a sad and difficult time. Just to place things in perspective, we had a school shooting the other day where numerous young, very young children were murdered by a shooter who actually bought 2 high-powered automatic weapons on his 18th birthday. So I don't know if there is another quote unquote civilized or first world country where children can just legally buy high-powered assault weapons, particularly at 18 years old, with what had to be very little training. I don't know how that's supported by our legal system or our society. And that fact, along with the numerous killings that have happened over the last 20 years and before, of course, but this has become a commonplace occurrence, and it happens to be happening more and more frequently. These hate crimes, these killings, these eruptions of violence that actually seem to be expressions of a need to communicate something that isn't being addressed in our world. So the issues seem to be twofold. One is, where are the checks and balances in place to kind of mediate this? And why have we lost those? Because of money and power and influence and politics? Why can't we change anything? That seems really frustrating, and it seems really heartbreaking. The other part of the equation is, why is this violence happening in the first place? What are the needs that young people have that are not addressed, that are being acted out in violence? Whether they're their own abuse and trauma from their own families or their own lives, or whether it's simply a breakdown of the mental, psychological support systems in our educational system, or whether it's just an orientation of our society toward materialism and toward things that ultimately do not nurture the spirit or nurture the soul. We are living in a very shallow and plastic time. And there's so much to be excited about in our current world, and so much of technology and so many advancements in our world. And I was just in New York City recently showing it off to some family members, and there are new buildings going up everywhere. And it's exciting and it's beautiful. The power of the money and the power of the ability of that city to regenerate and rejuvenate itself is very much a flagship of the power of our country to rejuvenate and rebuild itself. But where is the heart in it? I don't personally think it's a problem to have wealth. I don't think it's a problem to have beautiful buildings. I don't think it's a problem to have enormous expansion of our society. I think it's a problem when we're not addressing our basic spiritual needs. And I don't think the two need to be in conflict with one another. And that very much is a very parochial view for me. I come from what's called Shambhala Buddhism. It's an growth of Tibetan Buddhism, the westernization of it. And Shambhala Buddhism is a relatively more modern lineage of Buddhist teachers, but its basic principle is that there's nothing in our society that is inherently evil. There's nothing in our society that is inherently wrong. There's nothing in our psychology that is inherently evil, and there's nothing in our heart or our spirit that is inherently wrong. The problems are when we lose sight of our intention, we lose sight of the view. We're all of a sudden caught up in competing with other people. It's more important to hold on to our political hegemony. I say that incorrectly. It's more important to speak poorly. It's more important to hold on to our specific parochial point of view than it is to open up and begin to understand. Because if we open up and understand, we have to give up ground. We have to let go of something. There's no way we can listen without letting go of some of our opinions. It does not mean we have to change our opinions. It doesn't mean our opinions are incorrect. It just means that some silence so that other people can speak, and some listening and letting what they say affect us is integral to a society beginning to knit itself and bring itself together. Like many of us, I've been moved, angered, heartbroken, and enraged by the school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, Uvalde, Texas. The shooter was able, as I said earlier, to buy 2 high-powered assault rifles on his 18th birthday. Think about that. Sort of still a child. What of his parents? What of the government? What of our acquiescent society? What of myself? Where is the personal responsibility for any of us and all of us? And for right now, if we don't know what we can do aside from vote in a way that we think might eventually affect some kind of change, what we can do is allow ourselves to be brokenhearted. What we can do is allow ourselves to feel and be present as humans and part of a society of humans. And that is more important than I think we might think. Because when we get upset about something, we feel like we have to have a big answer and a big response to that upset. Our response has to be commensurate with how upset we are. But actually, if we're very upset, a good first step is to just feel the feeling before we react, so that maybe we could respond with some kind of creative intelligence in a way that people can hear us, in a way that we can be heard. We're living in a world where violence, disease, and suffering coexist with beauty, love, and kindness. Both of those things are existing. And if we get angry and shut down because of the injustice, we're also shutting down against the beauty and the love. However, it's not an effective, long-term, sustainable strategy to just ignore the violence, ignore the cruelty, and just focus on the goodness. That's like spiritual bypassing, that we use our meditation so that we don't have to deal with the discomfort. Trungpa Rinpoche famously said, meditation is not a vacation from irritation. It's about opening our eyes and opening our heart and opening ourselves to what's actually happening. It doesn't mean we have to do anything about any of it except be present with it. And that's huge. So the basic guideline, and this is echoed through working with emotions or just working with Shenpa and attachment, and in this case, working with the massive, frustrating, broken heart of this gun issue and violence in our country, that when we don't know how to react, we need not react. But that doesn't mean we need to dissociate or run away. It means we sit and open our heart and feel strongly and become a voice in the community for what we feel is right, responding to the tragedy with love and kindness, not because that's sweet, but because love and kindness is a more effective means. It's a way to make change happen. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes persistence, but it can be done. Simply opening our heart. I was thinking a lot about the image of a Buddha, sitting down in order to stand up for ourselves, sitting down and rising up. The image of the Buddha and that posture of warriorship, that idea that the Buddha is present with the great pain of existence without flinching, without hiding, without rationalizing, without running away, that is just simply there, present in the face of it. And it doesn't mean that a great Buddha doesn't have a few moments of darkness and a few moments when they throw something against the wall, or a few moments when they don't shout out in complete frustration, but it means we bring ourselves back, because that's our practice. Our practice is not to hold ourselves in some perfect state. Our practice is to bring ourselves back, to keep coming back to that open heart, to keep coming back to the power of that wounded, broken, open heart. And if something arises that is an appropriate response rather than a reaction, the next right move, so to speak, is there for us. But no one can tell you that, and no one need push you into that. In order to find that, we have to come from serenity. I've told you this story before, but one of my personal difficulties when I do the personal part of my Tonglen practice was a period of time that was very dangerous for me in a number of ways, like frighteningly so. And I was also overwhelmed by my life. So the difficulties were very high, and my ability to respond to them was not very good. I didn't really have a lot of strength. I was trying to find it in my meditation, but I was so broken down with anxiety, I didn't know what to do. And the anger and the need to lash out against the people who I felt had victimized me was such that I was actually hurting myself. I wasn't addressing anything with anyone else. I was hurting myself with this aggression and this anger. And I fear many people may be doing that now with the situation that we're going through politically. Anyway, I had a breakthrough. I started listening to Peter Levine and his trauma work and going through the work, and also listening to Pema Chodron and her Tonglen teachings. And I really felt like somatic experiencing and working with trauma and also Tonglen were a beautiful confluence in my life, and something woke up and really changed in me. And one morning, I was laying in bed and I was too scared to get out of bed. And like I had been every morning, and I was living in a very violent situation, and I was not wanting to get up. But what I would do is pull myself out of bed and do all the things you might think you do. I'd go to the gym, or I'd go running, or I'd get on the phone and talk to a friend. At this time, it was different. This time I said, I'm going to stay in bed and I'm going to lay here until I have found serenity and I could get up feeling good. I went into my heart and I did the Tonglen work from bed. And I waited until I was right with myself so that I wasn't springing awake from bed in some act of aggression or self, aggrandizing, pumped up energy, which wouldn't have been real. I wanted to get out of bed, feeling my fear, feeling my broken heart, and feeling the confidence that I could do it. And I got there. I got there through my contemplation, and that became a cornerstone of my practice, which then became a cornerstone of the recovery of that period, which then led me from that situation into much more healthy, beneficial, and lovely situation, which I include this gathering in, which I include the ability to be able to talk about the Dharma in ways that have actually fundamentally changed my life. It became clear to me from my personal experience that nothing that comes from aggression, even if it's a reaction to aggression and running away from it, no response, positive or negative, to feeling shitty is ever going to lead to a positive outcome. That we have to move forward based on our open heart. We have to move forward based on acceptance. And with Tonglen, we do that. We breathe in and accept the not only tragedy of our current existence, but the complete insanity that we don't even know how to repair any of this, or what it's actually the causes and conditions are. Everybody has their ideas, but it's overwhelming. The one thing we know is how we feel in the moment. And if we refuse to run away from that, and we just let ourselves be here present with it, and maybe find within all of that a little space to smile, to find the things we're grateful for, to find the love that is always here, to find the communication and the community that is available to all of us always, when we stop yelling and fighting and wounding each other. When we stop wounding each other and just rest in our own personal pain, we have the ability to use that pain as a springboard to communicate with each other. This really hurts me. And that makes it easier for people who are also hurting. Maybe that's a reasonable and simple and non-aggrandizing, non-exaggerated first step. Just being here. And someone asked Trungpa Rinpoche once if the Buddha felt pain, or felt anxiety, or felt fear. And Trungpa said, oh, much more than we do. Because the more awake we are on the spiritual path, the more we see the suffering, not the further we are distanced from it. That's a misconception that the modernization of mindfulness and the commodification of meditation practice try to promote this idea that we could go into a blissful Zen state. The truth is, the idea of meditation, mindfulness, and awareness practice is for us to be present in our world as it is, not changing our world in our head to where it's going to make us feel comfortable, but being present with what's actually here and what's actually here, and becoming comfortable with that by returning again and again to our heart center, to the actual center of gravity and center of power spiritually for all of us. This caring and tender and incredibly wounded heart that is much bigger, much stronger than I think we give it credit for. So I'm interested in what you have to say and what your thoughts might be.